And yes, that gospel, that is one. It used to scare me, but now it is the greatest honor of my year to read that, to name the kings of the children of Israel for 42 generations, and to say them each with honor, and to say them properly in the Hebrew name. John the Baptist was the first follower of Christ, for he was his cousin. He knew and recognized his Lord was still in his mother's womb. If you think back to Luke's first gospel, from when we were celebrating Mary's Immaculate Conception, the baby leapt in her womb upon hearing Mary's greeting. And Elizabeth exclaimed, "Blessed are you, Mary." And the child in my womb leapt upon hearing your greeting. When Christ was in his ministry, he stated, "Those who are first must be last, and the last must be first," as well as, "Those who are served now shall be the ones serving when my Father comes, and those who are serving now shall then be served." John the Baptist was first as follower, but also first to lose his life in service to Christ. He was never one to be served, but always was serving others. For decades, the high priests thought him nutters, crazy. For a diet of steady wild honey and bugs will give that impression. But, as we will read in a day or so, it was proclaimed by Angel Gabriel that he should never partake of alcohol. And there were certain foods he could not partake of, so the wild honey and bugs kept him outside and kept him from violating any of the proclamations prior to his birth. His service to the Word, from birth to death, was never ending. When John the Baptist started baptizing the Jews, he did it to start anew, to wash away all of their sinfulness and resentments and failures, to abide by their agreements and covenants with the Lord, all the way back, generation after generation after generation, all the way back to coming from Egypt, back to that time, 42 generations, when the Jews entered Jerusalem, the so-called land of milk and honey. They crossed the Jordan River. That was the water that Moses could not cross. So by John baptizing them in the water of the Jordan River, John was establishing anew each person's individual bonds with the Lord. When Jesus Christ then came, 7 to 12 years later, depending on where they lived within Judea, they'd all heard of him and his ministry for quite a while prior to his arrival in their village. Some titled him the second coming of John the Baptist, for they had heard already of John's murder. But for those who were not aware of his murder or the circumstances thereof, they titled Christ as Elijah restored. But Christ knew who had caused the murder of John and who had made it happen, and the very sinful circumstances, the incest, and all the other circumstances. There was enough sin for very many, but none was John's. John died. John was born sinless. By the act of God, his original sin was removed, and he died sinless. Then Christ started to baptize, but he didn't use water. He used the Holy Spirit. So those who received this second baptism were changed by it forever. Others reported that a light seemed to emit from their faces. It was as if, quote, the source of light, there was a light shining from inside of them, their faces, their person. But that wasn't possible, for at this time, the source of light was either the sun or fire. So seeing light coming from a person's face, how could that happen? That would be a miracle. And that was something to talk about.